Picture this for a moment. A world where the responsibility of birth control is no longer carried by one person alone, where men do not stand at the edge of the conversation as silent spectators, but step fully into it as equal partners. Now, ask yourself why this idea still surprises so many people. Why does it feel unusual when millions of men say they want more control, more choice, and more responsibility when it comes to preventing pregnancy? Why do we still act as though birth control belongs to only one side of the relationship? That question goes straight to the heart of a major change happening right now. A change in science, in culture, and in the way people think about responsibility. And the truth is, this change may be much bigger than most people realize. For decades, the conversation around birth control has been shaped by an old pattern. Women were expected to manage most of it. Women were expected to remember the pills, track the cycle, deal with the side effects, schedule the appointments, and carry the mental burden that comes with planning around fertility. Men, on the other hand, were often given a much smaller role, usually limited to condoms or permanent sterilization. That imbalance became so normal that many people stopped noticing it. But normal is not always fair. And when a new generation of men begins to say, "We want more options," that is not just a medical request. That is a social shift. That is a sign that the old story is no longer enough. The reason this matters is because birth control is not a small issue. It affects health, freedom, relationships, finances, education, careers, and the future itself. It shapes when people become parents, how many children they have, whether they are ready for parenthood, and what kind of life they want to build. It affects couples in deeply personal ways, but it also affects society at large. When people have better control over reproduction, they often have better control over the rest of their lives too. That is why every conversation about contraception is really a conversation about choice, dignity, and responsibility. When men say they want to handle birth control, many of them are not saying they want to replace women's choices. They are saying they want to share the burden. That difference matters. Shared responsibility is not about competition. It is about partnership. It is about recognizing that if two people are involved in creating the possibility of pregnancy, then both people should be involved in preventing it. That simple idea may sound obvious, but for a long time it has not been treated that way in practice. And because it has not been treated that way, millions of women have carried a heavier load than they should have had to carry alone. There is also something deeper happening here. Men are beginning to see that responsibility does not make them less masculine. In fact, it does the opposite. A man who is willing to take part in birth control is a man who understands planning, respect, and accountability. He is not stepping away from strength, he is stepping into maturity. Real strength is not refusing to help. Real strength is being willing to do what is necessary, even when it is inconvenient, even when it requires discipline, even when it means putting someone else's well-being alongside your own. That kind of strength should be admired. Still, the excitement around male birth control must be balanced with honesty. This is not an easy problem to solve. It is not enough for a method to sound good in theory. It has to work in real life. It has to be safe, reliable, reversible, affordable, and practical. It has to fit into human behavior, not some perfect laboratory version of human behavior. And that is where the challenge becomes intense. A contraception method for men must do more than block sperm. It must earn trust. It must be something people will actually use, keep using, and understand clearly. That is a much higher bar than many people imagine. Scientists have explored many possibilities over the years. Some approaches focus on hormones. Others aim to reduce sperm production. Some try to block the movement of sperm. Others look at non-hormonal methods that might be easier to tolerate or easier to reverse. Each of these ideas comes with promise, but also with obstacles. The body is a complex system. Changing one thing can affect something else. And when a method is designed for millions of healthy people, the margin for error is small. A contraceptive does not treat disease. It is used by healthy people who expect it to improve their lives without creating new problems. That makes safety even more important. This is one reason progress has taken time. People sometimes ask why male birth control is not already everywhere. The answer is simple. Science can move forward, but it has to move carefully. A product that looks promising in a study is not the same thing as a product that can be trusted by the public. Researchers have to prove that it works consistently. They have to prove that side effects are acceptable. They have to prove that it can be used in everyday life, not just under ideal conditions. And they have to prove that if a man stops using it, fertility can return in a reasonable way. Reversibility is especially important because many men want control without permanence. That desire for control is a major part of the story. Many men do not want to be pushed directly toward permanent sterilization. They want a middle ground. They want something more flexible than a vasectomy, but more dependable than hoping their partner's method is always working perfectly. They want a method that fits real relationships, where plans change, where people grow, where financial situations shift, where the future is not always fixed. That is not selfish. That is normal human behavior. People want options that respect their changing lives. At the same time, the discussion about male birth control is not only about chemistry or medicine, it is also about trust between partners. In many relationships, one partner quietly carries the pressure of remembering, tracking, and managing contraception. That can create invisible stress. When the responsibility is shared, the stress can ease. Conversations become more open, decisions become more deliberate, and the relationship itself often becomes more honest. When a couple can talk clearly about family planning, they often communicate better in other areas too. Birth control becomes a doorway to deeper trust. There is also an important public health angle. Unplanned pregnancy can change the course of a person's life in ways that ripple outward. It can affect education, work, finances, mental health, and the well-being of children who are already born. When more people have access to better contraceptive choices, it becomes easier to plan families intentionally rather than reactively. That kind of planning can reduce stress and improve outcomes. Male birth control, if done well, could become one more tool that helps couples make thoughtful decisions before crisis forces them to. But we should not pretend that interest automatically turns into use. That is one of the most important lessons in medicine and public health. People often say they want a solution until the solution becomes real, and then they begin to worry about the details. Will it affect my mood? Will it lower my energy? Will it change my libido? Will it be easy to take? Will I forget? Will I trust it? Will my partner trust it? Will my doctor recommend it? These are not trivial concerns. They are the real questions that determine whether a method becomes popular or disappears. A good idea can fail if people do not feel comfortable using it. That means the future of male birth control depends not only on science, but on communication. People need clear information. They need to understand how a method works, what its benefits are, what its limits are, and what side effects might happen. They need instructions that are simple enough to follow. They need counseling that is honest rather than promotional. They need doctors who can answer questions without judgment. When people feel informed, they feel more confident. And when they feel confident, they are more likely to use a method correctly and consistently. One of the reasons this subject captures so much attention is that it challenges old assumptions about gender. For a long time, many people unconsciously accepted the idea that contraception is mainly a women's issue. But that assumption does not match reality. Pregnancy is the result of two people. Reproductive responsibility should reflect that. When men step up, it does not remove responsibility from women, but it does create balance. And balance matters. In relationships, in medicine, and in society, balance makes systems stronger and more sustainable. There is also a cultural side to this. Some men may hesitate because they think taking birth control somehow makes them less manly. That belief is outdated, but it is still powerful in some places. It comes from the old idea that men should always be in control through action, not through healthcare. But modern adulthood is not about pretending that the body and future do not matter. Modern adulthood is about making thoughtful choices. A man who uses birth control responsibly is not weak. He is responsible. And responsibility should never be confused with weakness. This is especially important because the future of contraception may depend on how the public talks about it. If the conversation is framed as a joke, people will dismiss it. If it is framed as a sign of weakness, many men will resist it. But if it is framed as partnership, planning, and shared dignity, then the idea becomes much more powerful. Language matters. The words used in public discussions shape attitudes. Attitudes shape behavior, and behavior shapes health outcomes. That is why serious conversations about birth control are not just about products. They are about the story a society tells itself about responsibility. The science itself, of course, is fascinating. To create male birth control, researchers have to think carefully about sperm production, sperm function, hormone regulation, and reversibility. Some methods aim to temporarily reduce sperm count. Others attempt to block the pathways sperm use to travel. Some experimental approaches try to stop sperm from becoming capable of fertilization without permanently changing the body. Each approach has its own strengths and weaknesses. Each one faces its own questions about long-term safety, user comfort, and effectiveness. The complexity of the biology explains why this field is not moving as fast as many people would like. And yet progress is still progress. Even slow progress can be meaningful if it keeps moving in the right direction. A few years ago, many people thought the conversation around male contraception was almost hypothetical. Now more and more men are openly saying they want it. That alone changes the landscape. Demand pushes innovation. Interest draws funding. Public attention keeps researchers moving. And when enough people express the same need, what once seemed niche begins to look inevitable. Social change often starts this way, first as an idea, then as a request, then as an expectation. The interesting thing is that many men who support male birth control are not necessarily unhappy with condoms or existing methods. They simply want more choice. That is a key point. This is not about rejecting what already exists. It is about filling a gap. Not every relationship is the same. Not every person has the same medical history. Not every couple wants the same balance of convenience, reliability, and control. Some people want something temporary. Some want something more consistent. Some want something under the man's direct control. Some want the freedom to change later. A healthy medical system should provide more than one path. That is one reason why a future with multiple contraceptive options for men would be such a major step forward. It would allow people to choose based on real life rather than limited possibility. It would also reduce the pressure on women to be the default managers of fertility. That pressure is often invisible to people who do not carry it, but invisible burdens still weigh heavily. A shared system means shared thought, shared planning, and shared care. Those are not small benefits. They can change the entire experience of intimacy and responsibility inside a relationship. Still, the question remains, will men actually use these methods if they become widely available? That is where trust becomes central. A method can be scientifically brilliant and still fail if people do not trust it enough to use it consistently. Trust comes from safety data, doctor recommendations, user experience, and public understanding. It comes from knowing that a method has been tested carefully and explained clearly. It comes from hearing from other users. It comes from confidence that the method will not create more problems than it solves. Without trust, even a great product can struggle. This is why the public conversation must stay honest about side effects. Every method has trade-offs. Some people worry that men may not accept the same burden women have carried for years. That concern is understandable. It raises a fair question about equality and fairness. Should men be asked to experience side effects if women have already tolerated them for decades? Or should the goal be to create methods with fewer side effects for everyone? That is the right direction. The future of birth control should not repeat old problems. It should learn from them and improve them. Another important issue is that pregnancy prevention and protection from sexually transmitted infections are not the same thing. Even if male birth control becomes widely available, condoms will still matter. They remain one of the best tools for reducing the spread of infections. That means the future is probably not about one method replacing everything else. It is about a broader toolkit. Some people will use condoms. Some will use hormonal methods. Some will choose permanent options. Some will combine methods. The best system is the one that gives people the flexibility to choose what fits their life and health needs. When men get involved in birth control, relationships can become healthier in subtle ways. There is less room for resentment. There is less assumption that one partner must automatically handle everything. There is more space for mutual care. And when both people know they are responsible, both people may feel more respected. Respect is not a minor detail. It is one of the foundations of lasting love, trust, and partnership. In that sense, birth control is not only about avoiding pregnancy, it is about learning how to care for each other with more fairness. There is also a larger social message here. If men are increasingly open to birth control, that suggests men are also increasingly open to being thoughtful about reproductive health. That matters because masculinity has often been shaped by silence, avoidance, and risk-taking. But the future may look different. The future may reward men who are informed, engaged, and emotionally responsible. That is a healthier model. It benefits partners, it benefits families, it benefits children, and it benefits men themselves because responsibility often leads to better outcomes in every area of life. We should also remember that scientific progress is rarely a straight line. There are setbacks, there are false starts, there are moments of excitement followed by disappointment. That does not mean the field has failed, it means the field is hard. Many of the greatest advances in medicine took years, even decades, of careful refinement. Male birth control may follow the same path. It may take patience before it becomes ordinary. But ordinary is often how the best ideas become powerful. Once something is easy to use, people stop thinking of it as revolutionary and begin living with it as part of normal life. And that is really the heart of the matter. Men wanting to handle birth control is not just a headline. It is a sign of a bigger change in how people think about partnership, biology, and responsibility. It shows that the old boundaries are beginning to soften. It shows that more people are ready to question the idea that contraception should fall mostly on one side. It shows that science and society are moving together towards something more balanced, more practical, and more humane. The future of birth control will likely depend on a simple but powerful principle. Give people choices that fit real life. When people have choices, they are more likely to act responsibly. When responsibility is shared, relationships often become stronger. When the burden is more fairly divided, health and trust improve. And when science listens to human need, medicine becomes not just advanced, but useful. So when millions of men say yes, the world should pay attention. Not because the statement is shocking, but because it reveals something important about where we are headed. Men are not asking to be left out. They are asking to be included. They are asking for tools that let them take part in one of the most important responsibilities in adult life. They are asking for a future where birth control is not a burden placed mainly on one partner, but a thoughtful, shared decision made by two people who understand what they are building together. That is why this topic deserves serious attention. It is not only about preventing pregnancy, it is about fairness, it is about dignity, it is about trust, it is about modern relationships. It is about giving people the power to plan their lives with greater confidence. And if science, culture, and public understanding keep moving in the same direction, then male birth control may become much more than an idea. It may become a normal part of responsible adulthood. One more example of how medicine can help people live with more freedom, more balance, and more control over their future.